We are constantly bombarded with news about economic instability, political tension, war and conflict around the world, unhinged narcissists who are running countries. The mental health impact of that 24/7 news cycle that we're living in is massive. For all the shit that's going on, there's also positive, constructive things that are going on too. If we seek those things out, we can be a part of them. Hopeless people just throw in the towel and say, well, we're fucked. Hi friends, welcome back to this week's Quickie, our super fast take on all the adulting things that matter to you. I don't know if you guys are feeling this, but a lot of my loved ones, and myself included, have been really struggling with news anxiety these days. We are constantly bombarded with news about economic instability, political tension, war and conflict around the world, unhinged narcissists who are running countries, an AI arms race, trade wars, and all of that is streamed right to our phones 24/7, nonstop. And the mental health impact of that 24/7 news cycle that we're living in is massive. When you think about it, horrible things have happened for every single generation throughout history. Suffering and uncertainty have been a constant for every single generation, but the anxiety that we specifically are experiencing about it all right now as a society is really unique to this time because other generations did not have the non-stop access and the assault of scary news at their fingertips every single day. Other generations could just put down the newspaper and walk away or not turn on the TV. They would choose when and how and where they would engage in the news, and they could just easily take breaks by living their everyday life. They were not getting hour-by-hour updates on world events to their phones. They were not getting uncensored, horrific imagery and videos delivered to their phones. They were not getting AI-altered, out-of-context news and footage. And they didn't exist in this world where algorithms are specifically created and tailored to your fears and your scariest reactions to things. A Washington, D.C. therapist named Steven Stosny actually coined the term headline stress disorder. It's not an official disorder, but he uses it to describe the stressful effects of the 24-hour news cycle on his clients. The mental health implications of all of this are fucked. And so many people that I know right now are crippled by the stress and overwhelm of this constant barrage of news. It's keeping them up at night. It's making them feel hopeless and powerless in their lives. And it's even creating paranoia. It's creating division amongst loved ones. And it's really scary to see. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fucked up stuff happening in the world right now, but it is equally as scary to see how our culture of news and social media is magnifying these issues to the point that they have become all-consuming, and we have become paralyzed in fear and inaction. So what do we do about it? How do we stay informed? How do we stay responsible human beings who give a shit about the world while still protecting our mental health? Number one, first and foremost, we need to limit our news consumption. You could try giving yourself a set amount of time, a certain number of minutes or hours a week. You could limit your news consumption to 15 minutes a day or 1 hour twice a week. That way you get to choose, you get to prepare your mindset, and you get to decide how you're going to consume, and you're able to stop when that window of consumption is over, rather than being just bombarded 24/7 with news, not having boundaries in place and just being triggered over and over again. And a big part of creating those boundaries about how often and when and where you consume news is turning off notifications and muting news alerts so that you do get to control when you engage. You're not constantly being triggered. For example, I had to unsubscribe from the Washington Post and New York Times newsletters because that's how I was receiving my news before, straight to my inbox. It was great. It would be just a nuanced but consolidated summary of what was going on in the world every day. But since Trump got elected, they're literally sending out daily, what Trump has done today newsletters to my inbox, and I found it so stressful. And having it live in a place that I have to constantly be checking for work and for my personal life, there was no boundaries, there was no divisions. It was just nonstop headlines straight to my inbox, the notifications popping up on my phone. And it started to just be all I was thinking about, because every time I'd be thinking about something else, I'd get an update of some fucked up shit that Trump did. So I unsubscribed from those newsletters because I want to be able to control when, where, and how I consume my news. I know I can go to those outlets when I feel prepared and when I feel like I want to engage without having them seek me out. It's also helped me personally to consume more from explanatory outlets rather than like reactionary breaking news outlets that are just constantly sending you like catastrophic headlines by the minute without necessarily all of the fact checking, the nuance, the reporting that happens with outlets that take a bit more of like a long game approach and are really, really well researched. And those outlets might be putting out less news, which is great, but more thoughtful, more well researched. They're taking their time. Vox is a great example of thoughtful, nuanced explanation type of content rather than just like freaking out and sending you 100 different headlines a day. They literally describe themselves as clarity in this chaotic news cycle. That's like one of their taglines, and it's 100% true. That's what they offer. So I would recommend Vox. But in general, it is important to curate trusted sources of news to consume. Because if you're just constantly absorbing news from all of these different sites, from random people on TikTok, if it's just coming at you from every different angle and you don't really know who to trust, you don't know what the biases are, you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know if it's fact checked, that causes more stress and uncertainty. So I would like narrow your focus on a few great outlets that you can trust, and ideally look for ones that have the least amount of bias possible, because otherwise we're existing in a bubble that's just delivering us the exact same ideas that we're consuming everywhere else, and it's shutting us off from other perspectives. So you can figure out where your go-to outlets lie on the spectrum of biases by Googling the media bias chart or mediabiasfactcheck.com and try your best to consume news from outlets that are more in the middle of the bias chart. Part of limiting your consumption is also being mindful of your social media use, because that's where most of my generation is getting our headlines. That's where we're seeing our global events unfold these days. And it's really overwhelming because maybe you logged on to look at a recipe or to look at some cute memes, but now you're seeing like horrific footage of stressful things happening around the world when you weren't expecting that. So I definitely know the more I'm on social media, the more impacted my mental health is negatively. I feel the difference those days and weeks when I have heavy social media usage. So I've started to put a timer that like clocks me out and logs me out of social media after a certain amount of time every day. And that does help. And it's making me aware of how much of my time is being sucked up by social media. And then I've also put a lot of effort into curating feeds that don't make me feel like shit. Just remember that you get to shape your own algorithm. The way that you interact with Instagram and TikTok, your behavior on those apps is directly influencing what you're seeing. So when you're lingering for longer or saving or sharing or engaging with content that is of a certain type, maybe it's more political, maybe it's economic, maybe it's fear-based, maybe it's coverage of wars that are happening, it's going to recognize that as your interests, and it's going to create an entire algorithm for you that just gives you more and more of that content. I think we all know this, but I don't think we understand how smart these algorithms are and how just a few seconds of lingering and of extra interaction on one post can completely change the way you're fed content. So I've gone through, and if I see something that's really unsettling to me, or if I don't want to be bombarded with things that I haven't chosen to consume actively, I am like clicking the ... button on those posts and saying, I don't want to see this, or like blocking that kind of content. And that will help redirect and like reshape your algorithm. So if you're really struggling with overwhelm, and if you find your algorithm is just feeding you stuff that keeps you in a state of anxiety and fear, we can make a difference in what we're consuming and what we're seeing by taking that time to like reshape our algorithm. The second key thing you want to do is focus on what you can control. So focus on the actions that you can take instead of being like, oh my God, the world is falling apart. Everything is terrible. I'm so overwhelmed and I'm going to sit here and just be depressed and anxious every day, because what's the point? That's not productive. And that's not a great way to live our lives. Instead, focus on what is my realm of change? What can I do to better myself and to better the communities around me? Can I be reading or watching deeper takes on issues that really matter to me so I have more nuance beyond scary headlines? Can I be volunteering or donating for causes that I really care about? Can I be raising awareness? Can I be hosting forums for thoughtful conversation? Can I be getting more politically involved? There's so much that we can do instead of just consuming stressful headlines. And when you actually care about something, you can focus on what can I change in this issue. It's important to also not get cause overwhelm or like cause fatigue. So if you try to change absolutely everything that you care about all at once, you're going to get really overwhelmed. If you're like, well, I'm worried about the environment, and I'm worried about animals, and I'm worried about economic instability, and I'm worried about homelessness, and I'm worried about taxes, and to try to control and make a difference in every single thing that you are concerned about at once is also going to be paralyzing. It's going to be too much. So it is important to give yourself grace and figure out, where can I move the needle the most on in my life right now? What cause is the most meaningful for me? And what is my realm of influence and impact? How can I really help in one of these areas? And then just start chipping away at things that you can control. Maybe it's just your own habits. If you're worried about, climate change right now, maybe it's just looking at how you're composting, changes you can make in your community and in your own home. The world is made up of a bunch of small communities who can make massive impact amongst one another. So try not to get completely overwhelmed and just debilitated by these huge political issues, because there's not much we can necessarily do to change them in the immediate, but we can influence our direct environment and our direct communities, and that's a better place to put your focus. The third key way to navigate news anxiety is to remember that it's normal to feel anxious, but how much we worry is completely within our control. So it's absolutely okay to acknowledge how you're feeling about the state of things, to be upset. It's okay to give a shit. It's okay to be like, how have we gotten here? I'm upset with politics. I'm upset with our economic structures. You can be upset about it. Like, this is not in any way an episode telling you to numb yourself or to stop caring. I think we have to care now more than ever. But if you are completely overwhelmed and paralyzed by the news right now, if it's giving you so much anxiety that you're not able to live your life in a productive and positive way, then there's changes we can make to our mindset and to our approach to this. It's important to keep in mind that worry is actually within your control. The research shows, even if you feel like your worry is uncontrollable, even if you're like, well, I've just always been a worrier, or I can't help but worry, look at everything bad that's happening, that's actually not scientifically true. You get to choose what you focus on and what you pay attention to. That's one of the core principles of metacognitive therapy, which is an amazing new type of therapy I've been working with. I wrote an article all about this on metacognitivetherapy.com, so definitely check it out. I will link it in the show notes, and it really expands on this idea. But the point is, negative and stressful thoughts are always going to pop up. That is a normal part of being a human. We can't try to completely suppress or stop or change thoughts that pop up. They're not in our control. And trying to control those thoughts can actually cause more anxiety if you're like suppressing, or if you are just spending a lot of time trying to like reframe every thought that you have. That might cause more anxiety. But we do get to choose how much we actively worry and ruminate about these thoughts. So if I get a thought about the news and I'm like, okay, things have never been so bad. I'm so worried about what's going to happen over the next 4 years. I'm so worried about what the trade war right now between Canada and the US is going to do in terms of economic stability. I can have that thought. I can think about it a bit. I can even worry for 15 minutes about it. But I get to choose when it's no longer productive for me to dwell on that, and I get to choose to pay attention to something else. So the thoughts will come and go. How much anxiety and how much worry we place on them is in our control, and hopefully that's something that's empowering to hear. Definitely check out metacognitivetherapy.com if you want to learn more about that form of therapy and that form of like challenging what we believe about worrying. The fourth and final key to navigating all of this is remember to focus on positive news too, because you are in control of your algorithm. You are in control of what you consume. So seek out uplifting stories. Seek out good positive media outlets that can balance out some of that negativity to remind you that there is good in the world. We cannot lose hope. There's so many great channels you can subscribe to. I will link all of these in the show notes, but I love Good, the Good News Movement. Some Good News is a great channel as well. We probably all know Tank Good News. I consume that content so much because it rebalances the spectrum of the fact that, yeah, there's difficult shit going on in the world and there's good shit too. And we have to have space for both. We have to remember that both exist at the same time and not get completely swept up by all of the catastrophes that we are constantly fed in the media. Consuming positive news is honestly so important because we have to still be able to prioritize hope. The 24/7 catastrophic news cycle is intended to drive fear, to drive chaos. because people who are scared, people who are overwhelmed and uncertain are easy to control. Hopeless people, they give up. They don't come together to create change and find positive solutions and mobilize movements. Hopeless people just throw in the towel and say, well, we're fucked. So the greatest form of resistance right now is to maintain hope. It's also the greatest form of self-care. It's a beautiful thing that the best thing we can do for our mental health is also the best thing we can do right now for the world and for our communities and for our relationships, because we can hold two things at once. We can be upset about what's happening in the world right now, and there is so much to be upset about. And we can hold on to hope that there are good people, good movements, good organizations, good communities that are trying to make the world better. And if we maintain hope and if we maintain clarity that for all the shit that's going on, there's also positive, constructive things that are going on too. If we seek those things out, we can be a part of them. We can be mobilized by hope. So don't let the fear and the overwhelm convince you that everything is bad. There is still good. I know that things can feel pretty bleak right now, but I hope that this episode helps things feel a bit more manageable. I hope it reminds you that there is still good, there is still hope. And when we take care of ourselves, when we take care of our mental health, we can show up better in the world. We can help others. We can be more productive, and we can all move towards a better future when we have ourselves in a good place. I love you guys. I'm rooting for you. You got this.